Welcome back to the Pilot Boys podcast. Really excited about our next guest. Very accomplished man and a good friend of mine, James Ihedigbo, Super Bowl champion on the football field, great father, great entrepreneur off of it. Looking forward to getting into your story, man, and the many layers of it.
Well, V, man, I appreciate you guys having me on the show. I'm excited. V reached out to me and said, hey, looking at having a slot open here and wanted to get you on the podcast. And I jumped at the opportunity just to, kind of share some of, the trials and errors of life. And then, also the benefits of the hard work. And so, I'm excited to be on the podcast and, joining some, distinguished gentlemen.
Love that, James. Can we just start out real quick and hear the story of how you and V met each other?
Wow. Well, we've, kind of had mutual friends, from just, our walks of life. V, I called him the mayor of Houston because he knew everybody. If you needed anything, he was the guy to go to. And so, from my time, once I moved down to Houston, we met, we linked up together, and it was, we were best friends ever since. Really, very like-minded. When I first met him, I was just like, man, there's something about this guy. Like, it's rare, and, we'll probably get into it, but there's, something about, a person, who grows up in a similar background, in terms of, immigrant parents and certain work ethics and traits that, you only get in your household. Like, you're not going to get it going to school. And so, real early, those are, keen things that we, both connected on. And cultivated, a phenomenal friendship, from that. So,
yeah, definitely, man. I agree with that wholeheartedly. When you have shared experiences in your past and how you grow up, regardless, James is Nigerian, I'm Indian, but the experiences are very similar, and it's great when you can make those connections and build real relationships the way that we have.
Can we talk a little bit about some of these immigrant values? I know, James, for you growing up, I'm sure a lot of these not only shaped the way you view the world, but also probably played a role in your success on the field and off the field. Can you talk a little bit about some of your upbringing, some of the things you picked up from it, and how that led you into football?
Yeah. Growing up in an immigrant, household, Nigerian, American household, our parents really wanted to instill, the values of hard work. Often, growing up, we didn't have an opportunity to create a crutch for ourselves in terms of, someone is viewing me or blocking the door of me trying to go into based on, just my race or ethnicity. That wasn't allowed because my parents always looked at it as we worked too hard to even get into this country for you to have that mindset to hinder you from accomplishing anything that you wanted to. So that early on just wasn't accepted. Was it things that we dealt with? Of course, there's growing up in Massachusetts, of all places, you're going to deal with, discriminatory, offenses and so forth. But yet that wasn't a crutch. It wasn't an excuse. What you got judged on is, what you performed at and academically, and the hard work that we put in. Those are the values growing up in our household. If you truly want to accomplish anything, then you make a plan and you execute and you accomplish it. And so, having those values, having, parents, who were, Nigerian with, the strong Nigerian accent, the disciplinary. Growing up in our house, it wasn't like, hey, you did something wrong and you got a whooping. Like, no, like my dad was all about military punishment. Like he would have us, doing wall sits, holding a stack of books with our arms open, in front of us. And, you'd have to hold that for as long as he said so. Like those are like the disciplinary things that, that we got. And it was like, that the last thing I want to do is hold wall sits or Superman planks or whatever it may be. But, it was, creative punishments that, that we got and, instilled that discipline in us.
And what's also unique for us as first generations, and you specifically as a first generation Nigerian, we see a lot of Nigerian American athletes now picking up, but Nigerians are much like a lot of foreigners. They look at sports and say, that's a distraction from your academics.
Yeah.
That's something you do as an extracurricular activity. They don't necessarily take sports dreams seriously. Take us into that with your parents and how that worked. I know you had older siblings, which helped.
Yeah.
But just tell us a little bit about how you were able to get your parents to buy into your dream of being an NFL player.
Yeah, when growing up, I mean, even when I was 6 years old, I mean, my parents, they loved soccer. That's, the main sport in our country. And, anytime, the Super Eagles are on, it's like, stop traffic. It's, it's real football.
Yeah.
And so growing up playing soccer, that's what my dad loved the fact that I was a goalie. And then when I wanted to make that transition to actually playing football, he was like, there's no point. He's like, you're playing, one sport, and it's, in the fall. Other than that, you can just, kind of continue to focus on, your reading, writing, academics, and so forth. And it wasn't until, I kind of, just, violated my parents' will, so to speak. Like my dad said no, and I just went and tried out for the football team anyway, and made the team. And then I invited my dad out to a game. And I remember him watching my first game and seeing how much I excelled from everyone else. And mind you, I was, 7 years old, but how much I excelled from the competition around me. And he was like, okay, maybe you can play. I'll let you play. and then eventually he loved it. But the thing in the Nigerian culture was they only knew, and at that time they knew what took them to get there. And that opportunity was a higher education. And so that's why so many immigrants, you see them leave their countries for the opportunity of the American dream, quote unquote, which is higher, quality of education. And then now you're seeing in this new, second, third generation Nigerians that are coming up, that you're seeing in the NBA, and the fourth generations that you're seeing leave Ohio State, and enter the draft. Their parents are now seeing the footprints that the OCU Minoras and, James Ihedigbo's and, Christian Okoye's that have paved in the NFL, and saying, well, there's something more to this. Yes, you can get an academic scholarship, but then you can also, make a good living playing in the NFL. And so now you're seeing more of those doors open.